Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hi, everyone. I'm Carey Conley. I'm the host of Moving Through and Beyond podcast, and I get the honor to bring on dear friends of mine who are out making a big impact in the world. And I'm bringing to you a lovely man that I got to be on his podcast last week. We had a great conversation, and so I wanted to bring him on and introduce him to all of you. His name is Rick Schwartz, and he is a life and professional development coach. And we became friends a little over a year and a half ago because we both aligned with a company called Oola, which we'll probably tell you a little bit about in this podcast. So thank you, Rick. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. You are a busy, busy man.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate so much what you're doing, what you're bringing to the world, and thank you. When you came out of my podcast, We All Have Something, your heart opened up and you shared so much about your personal journey and your trials and what you've been through. And that was such a great conversation. So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Actually, it was, I think, one of the most touching interviews I've ever done. Few little moments there where I kind of broke down and got a little emotional, but it's just is what it is. And I just appreciate you sharing that with the world. So tell everybody how to find your podcast.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. You can simply just search We All Have Something wherever you listen to podcasts, or you're welcome to go to my website, coachrickschwartz.com, and find out the information about how to get a hold of me there and also more about the website. But yeah, the website is We All Have Something, available on all players.
Yeah. Thank you. It was great. And I hope everybody takes a listen. But I wanted to bring you on because you and I, both as coaches, have a real heart for wanting to help people make breakthroughs and transformations in their life. And I know, I certainly did not grow up thinking I was going to be a life coach. And I don't know if this is what you thought you were born to do, but, what I wanted to know a little bit more about your background and how you came to do what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My background, my education, my last 3 decades of career have been working with wildlife and animals. I've studied animal behavior and animal science my entire life. I geek out on animal facts all the time. It's a big passion of mine. And part of that passion was always sharing that with others, because when you're working with wildlife, people want to know about that. People love animals. We have an innate desire, I believe, as humans to be closer to nature, and especially busy digital modern world, we're naturally separated from it. So when I come across people and they know what I do, they want information. And I loved sharing that. And I started studying people more than animals to get a better understanding of how can I reach them where they are? How can I share that information with them? And as I started studying people more and learning more about people, I didn't realize I was starting to build my portfolio of knowledge for being a coach as well. And part of career then was to go back to the college I went to. I was a part-time instructor there for about 3 years. And I absolutely loved it. I would still be doing it if things didn't change, because the college went from allowing part-time instructors to wanting full-time. So I couldn't do that. But it was really great. And through that process, I ended up mentoring a lot of college students. And again, I didn't realize what was happening in the moment. Hindsight, of course, is 2020. You can see how you're building up this awesome new path in your life, but I didn't see it in the moment. It was where my heart was, to help these students. And a lot of college students don't have an older sibling that's gone through the process of going from college to career, or they don't have anyone in their family who's done that. They're maybe the first one in their family, or they don't have family for whatever reason. So for a lot of the students, because my classes were basically almost the end of their college life. So they were transitioning to creating resumes, doing interviews, and starting to get out there in the world. And a lot of them needed that mentorship of that transition of college to career. And I was so honored that so many of them came to me over the years, and I'm still in touch with many of them. And it was just a wonderful thing. And it really filled me. It was almost like you've been living with the dimmer switch on in your house the whole time, and you never knew it could go up maybe a couple more notches. And so when I started mentoring these students, it just felt like this new energy about me, this new thing where it's like, whoa, there's more than what I've been doing that I could do.
Right.
I can help people on this level. But even then, it didn't quite click. to do life coaching. It's like, I'm just going to keep mentoring these students that I've been working with.
Mhm.
Well, fast forward right before the pandemic, I became ill because I had overstressed myself. I'm the type
Okay.
of person that will always say yes. And so essentially, the attitude of I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, that's just how I was living. I would go to bed about 11 or 12 o'clock. I'd get up at 4:30, and between 4:30 a.m. and 11 or 12 o'clock, I was going nonstop. Between my day job, between my family, everything else, I just was going nonstop, and that all came to a head right before the pandemic. And so much so that right before the pandemic, I thought I might have to go out on medical leave. I had lost a
Mm.
bunch of weight, even though I was eating well. I lost a bunch of weight. I was getting this lump in my throat, and no doctors could figure it out. So then everything shuts down for the pandemic, and so we're all kind of forced into that timeout from God or the universe, whatever resonates with you, and it allowed me to go, okay, how did I get here?
Mhm.
How did I find myself working a job I like in a family that's doing well, and yet I'm on the brink of just crumbling?
Mm.
So the long and the short of it was what I had done is I'd over stimulated myself in the sense of even when I wasn't having caffeine, I had mentally trained my body to release adrenaline, even though I didn't
Sure.
have a moment that required adrenaline. So I would get home from work 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock exhausted. I could pump in that adrenaline, stay up till 11, getting a bunch of stuff done around the house.
Wow.
And it
Yeah.
was just very unhealthy. So I said, okay, well, I'm working from home now, and I got extra time. Maybe it's time to mentor myself. What would I
Mhm.
say to myself if I came to me and said, look, I find myself here and I don't know what to do? So I started cracking open a bunch of books, reading everything you can. It led me down a path of really getting into a lot of the life coaching professionals that we see there in the world today. And I came across Dave and Troy's book, Finding Balance in an Unbalanced World. And I mean, the title alone was like, wow, well, that's pretty cool. Finding balance in an unbalanced world. That's exciting.
Right.
And what I loved about that book, and I've mentioned it to Dave and Troy, I've had them on my podcast as well. We talked about this. It's the way their book is written and the way they position things into 7 key areas. It's like taking the best nuggets of everyone else's books and thought processes and coaching and distilling it down to these principles and this framework. And that's not to say that they went out and cherry picked everybody else so much as the way they present it and how the framework is structured. It is doable, it's
Mm.
digestible.
Yeah.
And so I started following it. And within a few months, I started really feeling like I was gaining control of my life again,
Mm.
and recognizing myself, prioritizing the 7 key areas instead of just focused on work only. And on the other side of that, then, as I'm working through 2020, I'm like, I hear that they got a life coaching certification, and I had people at the company I work for, they were offering early retirement. I had people coming to me without me
Wow.
saying, hey, I can help you through this, asking, hey,
Big God wink.
yeah, they're like, hey, I want to
Yeah.
bounce some ideas off you. These are acquaintances. They wouldn't call them close friends. And we get into these long hour and a half talks about their life and where they want to go. And I'm like, man,
Mhm.
I want to do this. This is like that mentoring thing. So long and the short of it, Carey, is that I ended up getting certified to be a life coach through Oola. I have had countless clients ever since. That was November 2020 when I got certified. And I can't even explain the immense joy it brings me to be present in the space of someone who is working through their process and to
Yeah.
help guide them. The reality
Right.
is the answers are always within them. I just get to shine a light into the dark corners where they don't always want to see, or help them shift a little bit on their perspective.
Right.
And sometimes it's a simple little shift, but it makes all
Yeah.
the difference then. And so that's sort of the story of how I came into life coaching. I still work in the wildlife and wildlife conservation world. I still work for a nonprofit here in San Diego that does work all around the world as well. So I work with a lot of people in a lot of different aspects, but I absolutely, there's something about coaching, and I know you know this, Carey. I know you know
Yes.
this,
It's
that
very
in those
rewarding.
moments you get that vibration, that tingle where you're in the space that God has said, this is what you're supposed to be doing, this is how you're going to
Right.
impact the world. And I
Right.
absolutely love it, absolutely love it.
The part of the story I didn't know here, Rick, that is another God wink is how you started working with young adults first. because as I've mentioned to you and to everybody, I really have a heart for building a young adult community.
Hmm.
For a lot of reasons. Most people know I lost my son almost 6 years ago now. He's 26 to suicide. And I was doing the work that I do now, the coaching and the vision work and everything, way before losing him and my husband. But it became very clear to me that this is what I've been called to do. And when you're working with those young adults, I'm sure you saw and heard a lot of the same things I've heard about how frustrated they are, how most of them are very anxious about their future,
Oh,
um,
yes.
struggling with knowing who they are, do they matter, what's their worth, all the things. And I really feel like they need a lot of help right now. So there's no accident that you and I have met and that we both have a heart for this age group, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And and to your point, it's so challenging for so many young adults right now. I think of when I grew up, and so I came out of college in the 90s, early 90s.
Mhm.
My career started in 93, as far as the formal no more education, now working. I think back to that, social media that we have today didn't exist
Right.
for another almost 15 years. And so you look around your world at that age, and you compare yourself. Where do I fit in? How do I matter? What's my impact?
Right.
Do I have value? These are natural concerns, because the way the teenage mind develops is you're supposed to separate from the family unit. You're supposed to push back. You're supposed to go out and create your own experience. But in today's world, I think when that happens, there's so much hype around the perfection and the perfect
Right.
Instagram and the perfect everything else. And I
Yes.
can't imagine growing up in today's environment. I look back at my experience and think, wow, that was tough. I can't
Yeah.
imagine these kids today. And God forbid they don't have family or structure. I think if
Right.
anybody is listening to this right now that is in that age bracket, the early young adult age, do not be afraid to ask for help. Don't be embarrassed to ask for help. Reach out, because when you do, the people you ask for help from, they're going to feel valued, and they're going to want to step up and help you.
Yep.
And nobody is going to just pull you aside and say, okay, here's the answers to all the challenges you're facing right now, because a lot of them either don't know, or they don't know you're struggling. So please
Yeah.
find the courage to ask, because that'll make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. So true. And I've mentioned this on a couple other podcasts that there's statistically right now, the generation or the demographic that is struggling the most with loneliness and isolation are young adults.
Yeah.
And that's a very scary place to be, because, you get in your own head, which for most of us is not a great place to hang out all day, all by yourself. You really need to be talking to people, and you need to be in a community. You need to find a community of people that you can lock arms with, that are working through similar things you're working through and wanting to progress and get better.
Right.
And
Right.
that's not easy, actually, for
Yeah.
the young adults to find those people.
Right.
Because
And
a
and
lot
here's
of
the
times,
thing. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, a lot of times that means that you have to make some big changes in who you've been hanging around, and let some of those people go. And that's okay. I think it's hard for them to understand that those people aren't going to be their besties for life.
Right.
It's natural.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
natural. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard because even though we might be, and I talk about this quite a bit on my podcast too, but it's more about habits and behavior, but it goes to relationships as well.
Right.
We sometimes will stay in relationships or do behaviors that don't serve us well because they're familiar. We know them. We know what the
Yeah.
results are going to be. We know what the interaction with that person is going to be like, even though it's not good for us. We know what it's like. So because it's predictable, it's comfortable.
Yes.
Whereas pulling the plug on that relationship or changing our behaviors or our life in any way drastically, it may end up serving us way better, but it's so scary because we don't know what's going to happen, and that unknown
Right.
can cause us to freeze and go, you know what, I'm just going to stay here because I know what to expect. It's so dangerous to live like that. To take
Yeah.
the risk to make change is so impactful. This is something I've shared in talks I've given before on stage, and I want to share it with your audience since you brought it up about the difficulties of change. I lean a lot on my knowledge of animal science, and I want to share this. It's the concept of caterpillar to butterfly. And I think as a meme, we all understand that quite well. It's like there's this big change that happens inside the chrysalis. Well, it's from the animal behavior and the animal science side of it. Get this. Guess what the caterpillar actually does? When it finally hangs upside down, I'll take it, the monarch butterfly, well-known species. They spin just a little bit of silk. They put their claws in it. They shed their exoskeleton, which is their outside skin, and underneath that is the chrysalis that we normally see. Now, before that
Mm.
happened, this caterpillar had a mouth, a stomach, lungs, all the stuff to make it go, heart, everything, nerve endings, it was a living creature. Inside that chrysalis, then, it releases enzymes. If you aren't familiar with what enzymes are, your saliva, digestive system all has enzymes to break things down.
Okay.
Inside that chrysalis cocoon type thing, it literally digests itself. It's not that the legs of the caterpillar becomes the legs of the butterfly. It breaks itself down on a cellular level.
Wow.
And then it becomes literally a primordial goo. And then there's a couple of cells left over that don't get digested called imaginal cells that have all the DNA programming to make a butterfly. And all those free-floating cells are basically realigned to become the butterfly you see hatch out. The reason I bring that up because it's such a magnificent, incredibly crazy, mind-bending shift on the change that occurs from caterpillar to butterfly. So we talk about how difficult change is. I think the butterfly is a great example
Yeah.
about how much that has to go through in about 2 weeks' time to come out the other side as a butterfly. We talk about our personal change. It is disruptive. It's scary. It can be dark. It can be primordial goo, but the other side of it is so valuable. And it's such a great example of how when you look around the people you're hanging out with, if you're hanging out in community of people who are complaining about how bad life is, how horrible things are, how the world's conspiring against us, how there's no way we
Mhm.
can make it in this world today, what are you doing to yourself? Versus if you find a community of people who are like, I believe I can do better. I believe I can have better. I believe I can grow and I can have success in what's important to me. And you have surrounding yourself with people who are saying that. What an
Right.
awesome energy to be in and go, okay, yeah, this is how life is going to be.
Right. Wow. I love that description of the caterpillar to the butterfly. I've never heard that. But it is so true because I've been through this and I'm going through this actually myself of where you break down at a cellular level. You get through something, you finally reach a point where you have to change from the inside out or else your circumstances are not going to change.
Right.
And you can go in denial and you can avoid it for as long as you possibly can until it just becomes a non-negotiable and you got
Right.
to deal with it. But it is going within first, becoming aware of what needs to change and going to work on yourself. And it is a huge metamorphosis.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's why I love that analogy with the caterpillar butterfly. And to take it even a step further, the butterfly doesn't look back and wonder, what if I stayed a caterpillar? What would it have been like if I'd done that? It doesn't
Yeah.
torture itself. But it also doesn't have regret for the stages of being a caterpillar because it needed those stages to get to the point where it could become a butterfly. And that's part
Right.
of that growth and development that we have then as humans is sometimes our mind will start going, oh, what if I would have stayed back and doing that instead? Or, oh, I regret ever doing that. And they start
Yeah.
punishing themselves. Even though you get to the point of your life where you're a butterfly, you punish yourself for being a caterpillar. It's like, no. That was part of the process. You got to embrace
Yeah.
that. You got to embrace that. And
Yeah.
again, for any young adults listening, I'll tell you what, it's not just you. Even older adults sometimes get to a point in their life where they realize I need to change. Whatever I've been doing this whole time, it's been
Mm.
wrong or single focused. And it's one of those things where I have clients. It's interesting. College to career is a group of my clients.
Mm.
Career to retirement is another group because that's another big change people have to deal with.
Right.
But I've found because it's this transformational coaching that I work on, I've also had some people who are high performance, career minded people who have hit their 40s and they look
Right.
around going, I have no life outside of work. I don't even know who I
Right.
am. And in today's world where careers come and go, jobs downscale or companies downscale on their jobs, people sometimes find themselves without work and they've only defined themselves by work. And so now they don't know who they are. And so
Right.
the coaching that we do in tandem with the Oola program and the Oola framework really brings people out because it's a focus on your health and your fitness. It's a focus on your finances and your family and your field, which is your career. It's a component. But
Right.
that's one thing I say too is it's not just work-life balance. It's all 7 areas. There's faith, there's friends, and there's fun in there as well. So you have these 7 areas to look at. It's not just work or life. Work
Right.
is a component, one of 7 areas of your life.
I love that you're bringing that up because It is about balance. And I think a lot of people kind of snicker when we talk about life balance, right? Like everybody goes, yeah, right. Like that's
Right.
ever going to
It's
happen.
impossible.
Yeah. I can't change how things are going right now. And, I know that you got to a point in your life where you got really unbalanced. You kind of shared some health scares that you had along the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and just knew, like the caterpillar knew it was time to change, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Um, it's interesting how when we get out of balance, how it affects our health so much.
It really does.
Mentally.
And to that point, I always start with health. When I have a new client, we talk about sleep patterns, we talk about hydration, we talk about
Mm,
nutrition. They often think fitness means going to the gym. I got to go get a gym membership and
right,
go run around the block 6 times. That's sure, that can be part of it. Absolutely. If that's one of your goals is to get your fitness hardcore, sure. But really, you're right. It's your physical body, because that mind body connection is so amazing.
right.
If I can go off on another little monologue here when it comes to stress. So
Yeah.
we hear in the social media realm and memes a lot that fight or flight or freeze. And it is an actual thing. So when I was in college studying animals, we talked about how when like a lion is chasing down a wildebeest and they capture it, the wildebeest just freezes.
Mm,
The wildebeest isn't dead. All the rest of the pride come start munching on it. It's not, I'm sorry, but it's not dead yet. But it
mm,
just lays there. And what happens is there's a chemical release in the body that forces the body to behave a certain way.
right,
So for us humans, when we get in that fight or flight or freeze, what is actually happening? It's rooted in when we had to deal with saber-toothed cats and cave bears.
right,
And so what will happen in our body with the chemicals that are released is we need to move. We need to get out of the stressful situation because it's physical danger. So you
right,
either freeze under the rock and don't move until the cave bear goes away, or you run because you have nowhere to hide. And what other the part of that survival is our brain goes to single focus only. When we are in anxiety or stress, or we're dealing with that fight or flight experience, and it might all just be mental stuff at work, not even anything actually happening,
right,
we cannot solve the problem because our brain is forced into singular focus, which is only like, that's the problem, that's the problem, that's the problem.
right. Yes.
When we're relaxed, our brain can start looking at different perspectives. Our brain can start pulling things apart and go, okay, there's a problem, but what about this option? What about that option? But
Hmm.
in those moments of stress, you're just physiologically,
Right.
the chemicals in our body won't allow for it. And so one of the important parts of going for a walk, doing physical movement, is the only way to get those chemicals, those stress chemicals out of your body is physical movement, because that's how our body was designed, by the greater power, or through evolution, whatever you want to call it, is designed to get rid of those stress hormones. In our modern day, we sit at a desk, we get stressed out, we sit in our car to go home, and we're stressed out still, and we watch Netflix on the couch, then we go to bed and we wonder why we can't sleep. And then we get
Right.
up and do it all over again without moving our body very much. And so that is so important, that fitness, that physical side of it, because what that does to alleviate your mind and your emotions is huge. And we lose
Yeah.
sight of that in our modern world.
Yeah. So interesting how it's all so interconnected, right?
It is, yeah.
How we need to move, we need to have relationships with people, we need to be in a community, we need to mind our mind and our thoughts. It's just all, I think we just think we can do it all and handle it all by ourselves. Um, Especially the generations coming up the ranks now. Um, as you mentioned, social media has a big part to play in that. And we need to have awareness, number one, of what's going on inside. And that's hard to do because that means you need to stop and you need to assess what's going on. And you need to take a look at, what are my thoughts? What is my physical activity? Where's my money? How much time am I spending with my family and my friends? We're talking about slowing down. And for you and I, we both have, openly admitted that we are A-type personalities, right? We just do, and then we. But the older I get, Rick, the more I'm learning that I just need a lot more slower time than I do saying yes to everything. I say no way more now than I ever have. And it's just because I know that if I say yes to something, that means it's going to take away from something that I'm really supposed to be doing.
Right,
I
right.
Yeah, I teach my clients a lot about the how to not only, number one, create a vision for their life, get it in writing so that they understand their purpose. And once you understand what your purpose is, like I am very clear on what my purpose is, and I know you are too now, to stay in that lane. to
Hmm.
just do what I'm called to do and nothing more. And if there are other things that I need to do, I'll handle it short term, or I will either dump it or delegate it out.
Right.
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 So it's really all wraps up into this balance that we're talking about in those 7 key areas. And yeah, as we mentioned at the top of this, we found a tool, you and I, called Oola. The founders, Dave and Troy, Dr. Dave and Dr. Troy, 2 amazing men that have been teaching this for well over 10 years now. And Rick and I both use this tool not only for ourselves, but for our clients to help them assess their 7 key areas of life, the 7 F's, right? Faith,
Yep.
fitness,
Yeah.
friends, family, finances, your field and career, and your fun, to see
Hmm.
how you're doing. And then go to work at, balancing it out by using a digital tool where you can put your goals in, do some personal growth modules, and be in a community, which is, I think, the bottom line of what you and I are both talking about is ask for
Right.
help and get in a group, a community that can help you do that.
Yeah. And here's what's so important too. I want people to understand is they hear us say getting in balance and rebalance and all that. And
Yeah,
the reality is you never hit perfect balance. And I think some people they think about rebalancing life or getting a balance, like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. There's too many variables going on. There's too much stuff going on in my life right now that I couldn't spend that much time trying to balance everything. The
right.
reality is that I use the analogy, it's not unlike someone surfing. And even if you've never surfed before, you can kind of wrap your head around this. The wave is always changing. The current is moving. There's other surfers. There's wind blowing your upper torso. So you are constantly making minor adjustments to ride the wave. They are never in perfect balance. And if they are, it's short term.
Right.
There's too many variables. What the ULA program has done for me, what the framework has done for me, is it made me realize how I can adjust as the ebbs and flows of life occurs so things don't get completely out of balance and fall apart elsewhere while I'm dealing with something else. And that opportunity to have that framework, which creates a path, creates a written plan for you, is that when maybe a big thing comes up, you lose your job, there's somebody gets sick in your family, or you get sick, whatever it might be, because you have it all written out already, you have that framework. Even if you have to put it on pause for a couple of weeks, it's all there. So as soon as you can, you go back to it. It's not like, well, I tried for a couple months and it didn't work and that was stupid anyway, so whatever.
Right.
It's all there for you to get back into the process of maintaining balance as life happens. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand, is
Yeah.
that it's a very doable, realistic framework.
Right. And it's not meant to stress you out.
Right. Well, I mean, to your point, you
Yeah.
had said earlier that your superpower pretty much is saying no when it doesn't apply to what you're focused on.
Right.
And for me, it was the same thing. It gave me permission to go, you know what? Taking time to go for a jog or do yoga.
Yeah.
I used to feel guilty. I would get this, I would sit there and think, okay, 30 minutes of working out, and it would give me anxiety because I was thinking about all the things I should be doing for everybody else,
Right.
for work or for my family or whatever. And
You and
so
I must have been separated at birth or something.
because I couldn't focus on even the idea of doing physical fitness for myself, which at my
Yeah.
age, I'm 51, I need to move my body, otherwise it's going to get rebellious in bad ways. And so now because of putting myself through the ULA framework and really living what I coach, I can sit and do, like I did this morning. I did a 15-minute meditation, and then got some emails done, did some work. And before our interview today, I did 30 minutes of yoga.
Mm.
And because I have everything mapped out on how my day is supposed to go and where my values
Right.
are and taking care of myself, so I can show up for work healthy, I can show up for this interview healthy, I can show up for my family healthy. I'm like, I love it now. There's no guilt whatsoever for taking care of me.
Yes. Yeah. And I see you do your Sunday fun run and,
Yes.
putting that on Instagram. And I think
Yep.
that, it inspires me. It inspires me. I've never been a runner. I can walk
Yeah,
until
me.
my legs fall off, Rick, but running, but I see you doing that through the hills of San Diego. And I'm like, dang, I want to go do that too.
Yeah, I tell you what, I was not a runner either. In fact, because I was in such bad shape for so long, that and bad shape in the sense of I hadn't moved my body for over a decade, really, outside of just needing the basic needs of life.
Right.
that when the pandemic hit, I would go out for walks every day because I knew I needed to get outside and get fresh air as part of clearing my mind. My knees would kill me after like a mile of just walking. And then I was like, there's no way, I'm going to walk more than a mile. And then I got to 2 miles and 3 miles. And then I was like, I'm just going to try and jog, see if I can get my heart rate up a little bit. And my knees were killing me. But the thing was, is
Yeah.
once I conditioned myself, here we are 3 years later now, I'm running, 6 to 10 miles every weekend. And I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. But it's that understanding that it takes time. It's that
Right.
understanding that it's of value to do. And it's enjoyable for me too. It's a moving meditation, honestly, now when I get out there and run
Yeah.
up in those hills.
Yeah. Metamorphosis.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Well, you've given us so much encouragement and thoughts around how to, take your life and rebalance it and not to stress out about it, Rick, because I think that's what people are really struggling with right now. They know they're
Yeah.
out of balance. But like you and I've talked about, they're so busy and they feel guilty doing it. But it can be done, and it does not,
Absolutely.
it takes some time. But it's all worth it. So
It
worth
is.
it.
It is. It is. And for anybody out there who just feels that they've hit that wall and there's no way out or past it, I just want them to understand and know that you can do it. There are options. And the thing is, it's like I was saying, when we get stressed and anxious and it's that long-term stress and that long-term anxiety from things going on, we can't see outside of what exactly is happening in the moment. And so we
Right.
start telling ourselves, this is it. This is my life. This is how it's going to be. You can go through that metamorphosis. If you have to reach out for help, do it. There are plenty of people, Carey, myself, whomever, who are trained and certified to help people through this process. And again, as a coach, I've seen it client after client after client. It is a huge change. It's a miraculous change. And it's wonderful to see someone go from, I'm lost, I don't know where to go, to, I can't believe this is my life now, And
Right.
so it's wonderful. And I want people to hear that because you aren't stuck. You are just there right now, but it's not who you are. There's so
Right.
much more to you than what you're experiencing right now.
I love that. And I was going to ask you for a quote, but you just hit on something that co-founder Dr. Dave of Oola talks about all the time.
Yes.
And I would love for you to end us with that.
Well, yeah, it's where you are is just where you are. It's not who you are. And on the surface, as a Instagram post or anything else, it's a great quote. But I think when you start to really understand what that means, is so many times we define ourselves by where we find ourselves in life.
Right.
And that's not true.
Yeah.
You are at your core something deeper and more meaningful and powerful than where you are right now.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of taking the time to find out who that person is, what your purpose is, and following through with it and really living in your true life.
Yeah. So true. Thank you, Rick, so much.
My pleasure,
I
Carey.
appreciate
My
you.
pleasure.
I always enjoy our conversations. I know we will do this again. And I just appreciate you. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you. And if anybody wants to get in touch and chat more, just go to my website, coachrickschwartz.com, and I'm all over social media as well. I would love to connect, or reach out to Carey. This woman has it going on and she knows what she's doing.
Well, we're better together.
Yeah, true.
Love the collaboration. So thank you. Yeah, definitely reach out to Rick. I thank you again. And I want to just tell everybody, thank you for listening to this episode of Moving Through and Beyond. I'm your host, Carey Conley, and I'm here to remind you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.